Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Four Non-Blondes and the Mom podcast. I am Mariana Marquez.
I'm Naya Partlow.
I'm Michelle Hagee.
I'm Ina Liliviere.
And today we're going to have a conversation about Hairspray, the film. Most of us have seen the film, most of us have heard it, and has captured our attention, and we're going to talk about it today.
So I'll start off the conversation. I have seen both versions, the 1988 and the 2007. It's quite interesting how much they differ from each other. The 2007 really much embodies everything's great. We are in one, we're looking for the positivity, whereas in the 1988, it's very un-PC. It doesn't have the best language. It doesn't provide a lot of, I guess the best word is PC. They just say a lot of really terrible subjective wording. In the 2007, Tracy is looking for the positives. Her opening is "Hello, Baltimore," and welcoming, and she's singing on top of a trash truck, and she's perfectly happy about that. Whereas in the opening of the other one, it's just like gets right into it. And there's a lot of angst in the teens, and nobody's super happy. It starts out in the opening credits with a lot of suggestive body language, and it just doesn't prove to be aiming to be straightforward and not ill, for lack of a better word.
That's good. I love that we're having that conversation now, that comparison. And I think one character that we're definitely going to talk about and that comparison is Seaweed. So do you want to take us on that conversation?
Yes. So Seaweed is a young black man in 1962 in Baltimore. His mom is the host for Negro Day, and he lives in a record shop where every black dancer likes to hang out in after the show is done. He fights hegemonic masculinity most of all because he's a dancer, and he isn't showcased to be angry or an aggressive black man as the media usually portrays black men to be. Right. It's even showcased as hot, with Penny and even Tracy swooning for him at one point during some musical numbers. His whole thing is that he's a cool man, you know? I do believe Seaweed, however, has privilege of some sort. Yes, he's a black man, but compared to some of his peers, he does have a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
His mom is a host for like the hottest show on television, and that gives him protection and status, which is why he isn't scared to befriend Tracy at one point or even pursue a relationship with Penny. I also love seeing the interracial relationship between Penny and Seaweed being portrayed on screen, because even in 2007, that wasn't being portrayed on screen a lot. I wouldn't see, like, growing up, I wasn't seeing interracial couples. But now I feel like it has become more of, like, a common thing to see people of different cultures dating, which is awesome to see on screen. I mean, yes, white people did exclude him and his friends and family, but it is very interesting to see how he includes the white people in his life to his surroundings and to his culture. He brings Penny, Link, and Tracy into his own home, and he welcomes them, which is very wonderful to see, and that shows what type of character and what type of man he is.
Right.
I feel like Seaweed is the glue of the movie. If it weren't for him, Tracy wouldn't have gotten into the show and have gotten the motivation to fight for the integration of the show.
Wow. That's a really good point. And I think that a lot of the themes that we're seeing are starting to kind of like involve with that idea of consumption and how we as not just media scholars, like we're having this conversation, we have our evidence, but also how we were consuming this media at one point. I remember seeing the movie, I'm like, wow, like this is great, but it's almost like the lens of the behind the scenes of the media, because we're seeing the nicest kids in town. This is one of the musical numbers. And the film is really fighting with these various themes and audiences that are consuming issues of racism, they're consuming issues of bullying, they're consuming self-confidence. There's these very important predominant ideas that as we consume, we end up like almost finding our identity in it, or also lack of identity, which a lot of people, I think, through this film, it's very relevant. But I just wanted to talk really like briefly about the biggest issue like addressed in Hairspray is that racial integration, and we know that is very much intersectional identity, and it plays a lot of roles into various areas of someone and people. And just that idea of that inclusion of people of all colors in all of areas of society, like I mentioned right now, the story and kind of like how it was taking part in the film. We see a group of white kids and then we see a group of black kids, and it's kind of like they're fighting like themselves, even though they're both have the privilege to be on TV. And we see the nicest kids in town as there's in the lyrics it says, nice white kids who like to lead the way, and once a month we have our Negro Day. I quote this from the lyrics, and it's so interesting to see like, okay, once a month these kids are going to have this opportunity to be on TV, but it's not in the morning, it's at night. And then he talked about Seaweed, and Seaweed's mom has a very big, powerful role in the film, and how her name is Miss Motormouth Maybelle, and we see that comparison in the older film to the newer film, and how she has this very big role. So it's interesting to see that contrast. It's interesting how these themes play a role, and also how they're like affecting us as consumers, and how we're consuming these ideas. But let's keep going on to the conversation. Naya's going to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think influence and how you approach the media and how it approaches you and how it influences you has to do a really big part of like watching the movie and stuff. And one thing I noticed a lot was how ageism and the intersectionality of that was brought into the film. So something I noticed is how Tracy Depp never really comes off as insecure about her body. She never really, yes, she feels like judged for it, but she still exudes a lot of confidence, and she like is dancing. She's very joyous, like how you said, compared to the older movie, like she's dancing without a care of the world right when the film opens. And I feel like that body positivity that she has even influences her mom, Edna, throughout the film. And her mom shows that you can be beautiful at any age. And even in the song You're Timeless to Me, there's a lyric that says, some folks can't stand it, say time is a bandit, but I take the opposite view, because when I need a lift, time brings me a gift, another day with you. And I feel like this lyric specifically did a really good job at addressing the social pressures surrounding aging and how you're looking, dressing, how you appear to others, but how those characters see it as a gift instead, and they embrace it.
It's really good.
That's good. Actually, I wanted to add something. So I'm currently taking a musical theater history class here at school.
So cool.
And we were actually talking about Hairspray the other day. So my professor, she ended the Hairspray module with a quote from John Waters, which he created the original Hairspray. And he said this when the 2007 Hairspray was about to premiere. And he said, quote, the real reason I hope Hairspray succeeds is that if it's a hit, there will be a high school production where the fat girl and the drag queen will finally get the starring parts, end quote.
Wow.
And I feel like that's really the legacy of Hairspray, and it kind of goes with what you said, Naya. Because I feel like a lot of girls in high school didn't see themselves represented, and a lot of the gay kids and just didn't see the representation, which I think it's amazing how John Waters created something where everyone can get a role, you know?
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Well, and then I want to come back in on that. So it's interesting that you say in the 2007 version that Seaweed is the star. In the 1988 film, he's actually not.
Right.
They meet each other in detention. Motormouth is not the person who's in charge of the Negro Day. It's just kind of a segue character, and she supports it, but she doesn't have such a starring role like she does in the 2007. So when they created the 2007 version, I think that they really worked hard to spin it properly so that it could be useful. And like you said too, having that reflection for all walks of life to be able to have a starring role in these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's so good. And going along, these themes are so important. If we recognize them and we're able to talk about them and also see how these themes in this film, like we mentioned, the issues of racism, bullying, self-confidence, all of these themes like really do affect us in our view of ourselves. And not just ourselves, but the view of the world around us and how we're going to impact other people's identity. We have that impact to people around us. So I think this driving conversation of Hairspray has taught us a lot about ourselves, also just how media really does impact us, but also how we will be the next storytellers and just individuals who are going to set out like a different movement that we probably haven't seen before.
Yes,
but I think that's all of the time that we have for our podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening, and see you guys soon.
Yay!
You guys all did so good. Everyone rocked that.
Beautiful.